Welcome back to another episode of growedup, the show where I help you connect with your childhood experiences and help see how they've shaped our current adult world view. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Fernannd'O, and today I am going to talk about motherhood and masculinity, how mothers raise boys. And I am talking about this because I'm a mother and I have a boy. It is post Mother's Day, but I thought, I've been reflecting a lot on this idea of raising a boy because there's this huge shift in society right now. If you're in the internet spaces, I think you can kind of see what is happening in regards to the gender war. You have the manosphere, you have the red pill, the black pill, and then you have the pink pill and the blue pill, and there's the purple pill. There's all these pills out there, and all, I guess, in search of the truth regarding what gender is superior, or rather what is the truth about the opposite gender in order for the one to have an upper hand. I don't even know why everybody's like just on each other's case, but I just found that so fascinating, and it kind of started making me question what factors do I need to keep in mind when it comes to raising my son, right, as a mother? Because as a woman, there's certain things that I want from a man. Am I going to instill these values onto my son so that he can be the ideal man for a woman like me in his future? Or how do you navigate this? What type of a man do I want my son to be? And I think it's something worth reflecting. And I would like to specifically talk boys, because I've got experience raising boys, okay? Because I only have a boy. So I'm not shutting out any mothers who raise girls. I just thought that, it's easier to speak from a place of experience. So to start with, I want to talk about my own experience and understanding of gender and masculinity. I've mentioned here on the show many times that I grew up a tomboy. I wasn't necessarily the most feminine girl. So I've played and gotten along with boys for most of my childhood. Even now Okay, I get along with guys too, but most of my strong friendships are obviously shared with females. But as a little girl, I was very, very much playing with the boys. And I tried to think back about what my idea of masculinity was. And it was, I think, the traditional idea of being tough, of being, strong and fast and efficient, and just being self-sufficient as well. Like as a girl, I hated the idea that I need someone to do something. I always wanted to be that girl that could stand side by side with the boys, that I could be seen as one of the boys. Well, now I see that that's not the case, and it's not easily possible. But that was something that was very, very important to me as a little girl, and that I carried those traits, and that I grew with those traits, right? So the idea of being masculine was super attractive to me. I liked that. And also seeing my father, who was masculine in that he was the provider. I didn't see my dad do the traditional, again, male things like fixing a car or hanging stuff on the walls, changing light bulbs. Like he always outsourced that. But he was always on top of things, let's say financially, like in terms of being that provider, in terms of like leading people in the direction that he wanted them to be. And to have people go towards where they needed to be. But I never thought to myself that, you know what? My dad is not masculine because he doesn't fix cars, because I don't see him get dirty and all of that. So I never even carried that as a lacking trait within masculinity, because I've always known him to be this provider. So I would say that based on these experiences with masculinity and having grown up with a father like I had, I think one thing that I can say is that there was never a need for me to reflect on what type of man I'd want or what type of man I would raise, because I've just always had that space fulfilled by the type of man that my father was. So there wasn't really any room for me to fantasize about something that I was lacking or that they should be more of, because I just felt so complete with my father, right? So not up until recently that I'm seeing my son is growing. He's 12 now, and he's starting to really think and question certain things that are valuable and that are valid. And some things are like a little bit awkward that he wants to know, and it feels like because I'm the lady in his life, I'm the one that's more comfortable answering these questions. And there are certain things that I guess he will automatically go to his father for. But not until recently did I start thinking about what exactly am I drawing my what where am I drawing my inspiration from, or my ideas from, to pass on to my son. So I never really reflected on this up until recently. So today's episode is going to be a little bit reflective as it goes, because I didn't want to study this too much. I just laid down a few questions I think that we can answer together, right? And I will also just go through them as I see them, right? So addressing our own biases related to gender as females, right? So that is one thing that I think was very crucial and very monumental for me in becoming self-aware and in trying to be a better mother. I've always been the accountability person. I think that it's very important for you to have self-awareness and recognize that in some areas you might be falling behind, or you might be failing, or where you fail to stand up and take responsibility for something. And addressing these biases within myself, right? That, sometimes I'm a little bit complacent and I expect certain results. I don't really attribute that to be a feminine trait or a woman thing, but a lot of people will say that that's typical women, right? We do the bare minimum, but we expect maximum result. So addressing that side of me is very important. And also seeing how do I compare that to men, like in where sometimes I look at men and I feel like, yeah, well, but you don't step up, you don't do 1, 2, and 3, right? And then do I sometimes try to fill in those gaps for, let's say, my husband, who is my father's son and he's still in his life. And I feel like because I feel this way about men, I step in places where I shouldn't. And that's possibly even affecting a very crucial part of my son's upbringing. So I have to really be aware and address these personal biases that I might have towards the male gender, and try to refrain from attributing those biases towards my son, because I am the one that is shaping who he's going to be. I am part of somebody who's shaping his upbringing and who he's going to be and what type of man he's going to turn out to be. Balance the influence of your own upbringing with your desire to raise your son in a way that challenges gender roles. So that one I do see myself doing. I don't like the the double do. But I do find that to be a problem, where we always go to what we went through. We always go to what we've been through and try to take that and predict what is going to happen, and we prevent it by using those past experiences. So we fail to see in the moment, how is this boy shaping, right? What is his behavior? What is his attitude towards life or towards people? We just take past experiences from our upbringing, how men have treated us, and we impose these in our sons, right, onto our sons, without having given them the chance to either even commit these faults, which most likely they might or might not do. It's actually not easy to predict. But also, you kind of like don't give them a chance to develop their own personal identity, in order for us to shape that and see what direction they're going, and mold that based on their experiences and not our experiences. I think that's a very, very important thing to do, like to really, really try to balance that point. Because yes, you do have to learn from past experiences. That is fact, right? You do have to know that in the past 1, 2, and 3 happened, and because 1, 2, and 3 happened, I took 1 and 2 and 3 steps to prevent such things from happening. That is fair. But you also have to allow this child to shape their own personality without being imposed certain gender roles or gender ideologies on, so that they can shape into whatever adult or the type of adult that they are meant to be. We are here to assist them into being respectful and productive human beings, right? But we're not here to mold them into what we think is the ideal person. I think that's a big mistake we make as parents in general. Like, I do have to a little bit think about this. How do we really, really think about what we are doing as parents, in terms of, do we really understand that we are dealing with an individual and our role is to guide this individual into who they are meant to be, rather than what we think the ideal human should be, and we put more effort into shaping that rather than letting them flourish. So we need to learn to find that balance, right? And this is still with regards to reflecting on the influences of our upbringing and how we viewed masculinity as young girls, yeah, as mothers, young girls, and how we are passing these on to our sons. Encourage your son to challenge and question harmful gender norms and stereotypes in society. This one is a little bit difficult for me because there's a lot of like political divide in terms of like traditionalism and liberalism and 1, 2, and 3, right? In many ideologies, in many instances, I could consider myself like I don't like to box myself because I don't really subscribe to every single facet of either ideology. But I've got very traditional ideas, but as well as a lot of liberal ideas, right? I think that marriage is an extremely sacred thing, but also I think that if you are not going to engage, if you're not going to take marriage seriously, don't get married. If you want to, go around and do whatever you want to do, that's up to you. But I've got those strong feelings towards marriage, right? I don't know if that's even a good example, but there is this idea of the ideal masculine man and the ideal feminine woman that I do tend to subscribe to, and these are more traditional roles. I think a man should be able to provide for himself first, because if he can do that for himself, then he can do that for a family. If a guy can buy groceries, pay rent, know how to pay bills, and how to manage his finances, he'll be able to lead a household. I strongly believe that, and I think those are very important traits for a man specifically to have. As well as I think that it's very important for a woman to know how to be nurturing and selfless, right? Because as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter-in-law, a sister, or whoever, a lot of people rely on you. I noticed this has always been the case, like when it was just my son and my husband and myself. As soon as I am around, everybody wants to talk to me. When I'm not around, people aren't talking to each other. So there's something about my presence that makes my family all want my attention, and I need to have the mental fortitude for that. Is it exhausting? Yes, it tends to be, but I need to be patient and understand that they rely on me for that. Okay, that is my role as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter-in-law, whatever it is. And I cannot be frustrated and feel like, no, why do you sorry, only look at me, but you don't look at that person, right? But I realized how people really rely on me when it comes to the nurturing aspect of the household, whether the house is clean, whether we are fed, whether we are sad, even like just that emotional support. They look at the mom. And I've seen that even in my household with my mom and my dad and my brother. My mother, when she's in, we all want to talk to her. We want her attention. And that's just how I understand these gender roles. So I do subscribe to traditional gender roles. I don't know if I agree too much in questioning and trying to challenge these traditional roles, but also I don't know if I don't agree with that. I feel like we should encourage our boys to challenge these ideas and explore optional ideas for them that work for them, right? But in a way that it will be sustainable and that is going to be very, very productive for them. Because at the end of the day, as a man, if you're going to subscribe to the traditional lifestyle of having a wife and kids and all of that, there are certain things that are expected of you traditionally. And I think it's fair to give our boys now a chance, an opportunity to challenge and question these stereotypes and see how viable they are for them. Because at the end of the day, times have changed. Things are not done the same anymore. So Yeah, I think it's fair. Let our boys challenge these ideas and these stereotypes of what masculinity really is in society. I think it will be beneficial to them and to us. You see, guys, I'm using my woman at work mug. Ha ha ha. If you don't know, we did our first live podcast event, woman at work. Second one is on the works. It's coming. Don't worry. But I'm cold, so I decided to have tea. But I made a mistake. I put like milk in my tea, and that's not. Yeah, I'm paying the price. No, not lactose intolerant, but like in a lot of mucus and watery mouth and all of that stuff. Milk and honey does that to me. But that is the fact. That is the point of reflecting on our own upbringings and seeing how those affect the ways in which we raise our sons. Next point about how motherhood and masculinity go hand in hand. Raising a boy as a mother, raising a son in today's climate. This thing that I was talking about earlier with the whole, for example, the rise of Andrew Tate, of the red pill and so forth. Look, I'm grateful and lucky. I will say this. My son did follow the Andrew Tate. He knows who Andrew Tate is, but he did not agree with anything that Andrew Tate says. So I didn't have to do any work there because he was very dismissive and he understood very quickly that this is just crazy, right? So with regards to that, it was very, very easy. But I'm realizing now that he's got very... So Andrew Tate, the person, right? And I'm saying Andrew Tate specifically because we're talking about raising sons in today's climate. So Andrew Tate himself was very loud and his ideas were very, they're very exaggerated, right? So it wasn't easy for my son to be convinced by that. But I'm realizing that the message that Andrew Tate was spreading is very powerful and very, very, it's powerful, and people have found ways to make it less jarring. And I'm realizing that my son is slowly asking questions with regards to that, to infidelity, to money, why a guy should have money so that you can have all these freedoms. He's even talking a lot about marriage as a prison, so I'm seeing that somehow there is that influence still there, that it's inescapable. And it's challenging because you don't want to shut down the conversation. You don't want to be aggressive in your approach and say that, no, that is wrong, whatever. You really want them to explore these ideas and think about them. And, you kind of try to guide through very, very gentle and peaceful conversation. But it's very challenging because, especially now when our role models are YouTubers and whatever, they listen to their role models. And how can you as a mom have a louder voice on these people? It's very difficult because you're not a man. What do you know? And that's the message that's being preached. Your mom is not a man. She doesn't know anything. So of course she's not going to like what we are saying. Of course she's going to fight against it. So finding ways to really be the louder voice, or the louder voice of morality in your son's life, I think is the biggest challenge here, because some things might be so loud and so exaggerated that clearly that message is not received, but somebody can take that very same toxic message and make it palatable. And you really have to be careful, because also that's the other thing, you really have to listen to what these boys are saying, and you really, really need to be very careful on how you're going to respond. Okay, next point with regards to raising sons in today's climate: teach your sons to embrace non-traditional masculinity while still maintaining a sense of identity and self-worth. So again, that whole idea behind challenging traditional non-traditional or challenging traditional masculinity ideologies, right? I don't know how to go about that, because again, I believe that a boy needs to be self-sufficient, like it says here, right? You want to maintain the idea for you to be self-sufficient, and you want to retain your sense of self-identity. So how do you do that when you are teaching them to challenge certain things that might come natural to them, right? So there are certain aspects that come natural to boys, and why would you want to make them challenge their nature? And I need to really be very careful with what I'm saying here, because a lot of things that are bad come naturally to people, which you can say that this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, but the will, the desire to be a provider, is that really bad? But in today's climate, it is bad. The desire to be stronger, is that really bad? The desire to be competitive, is that bad? Right? It is being preached and taught that it is bad. Those things might come natural to my son. How do I tell him that it's bad for you to be competitive? You need to be less competitive. You need to go easier on your peers or whatever. It just becomes so difficult for me, again, to buy into the whole idea of fighting non-traditional masculinity ideologies, when a lot of these things just come naturally to certain people. Same with me. A lot of traditional feminine traits come naturally to me. I'm not traditionally feminine in terms of like, I don't really care for the pretty things. I do like pretty things, but I'm not as girly as like your girl, and but I'm still naturally nurturing. That comes naturally to me, right? So should I challenge that ideology or that instinct to take care, to be protective over my family? I don't know. So I don't know how you can challenge non-traditional masculinity while still maintaining a sense of identity and self-worth. If that is your self-worth, traditional masculinity ideologies, and that is your identity, why would you challenge that? So that, to me, is something worth diving deeper into. And I would like to probably, I think I'll get Kenny here too, that we can talk about this. Encourage sons to be open-minded and empathetic towards people. I think this is very important, right? And it is very important that they learn empathy. I'm a big proponent of empathy, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. You don't know what's going to happen to you. And you need to understand that the same way that this person is down and out today, you could be down and out tomorrow. And you would want somebody to at least have an idea of what you might be going through, so that they could have some sense of pity and help you in that instance. So empathy is a very, very important trait, I think, for survival. And I think that teaching our boys to be open-minded and empathetic towards other people is very, very powerful, especially if you're trying to nurture these leadership traits. An empathetic leader, okay, I don't want to go there, because that's a whole other can of worms, okay? Empathy, leadership, masculinity, okay, I don't want to dive too much into that, because I'll have to actually really think about that. But I think empathy does go a long way. I think empathy makes you more relatable. It makes you a lot more likable. It makes you tolerable. And I think that's necessary just for ultimate survival. People need to want to be around you. And I think it's, yes, encourage empathy and open-mindedness within our sons. All right. Next point, number 3, vulnerability and emotional intelligence. Yo, this one, okay? Why is emotional intelligence important for boys to learn from their mothers? Why do we think that it's specifically important for them to learn from their mothers? So I'll say this. I don't think it is exclusively important for boys to learn empathy and emotional intelligence and vulnerability. I don't think that it's exclusively important for them to learn this from mothers. I think it's also very, very crucial and important for boys to learn these concepts from their fathers, or from whatever male role models they might have in their lives if they don't have their fathers around. It's very important for males to teach one another about these concepts. But I think specifically with regards to why it is important for mothers to teach their sons this is because, again, not trying to push the whole women this, women that, but women are more experienced with dealing with emotions, And I think just teaching our sons to have that emotional intellect is very helpful to them. I think most of the times when we think about emotional intellect or emotional intelligence, we just think about crying and sobbing and all of that. But it's beyond that. Emotions are more than just crying, right? Emotions are also anger, it's joy, it is excitement. I mean, there's a whole array of that. There's love, there's whatever you wanna throw in the pot, right? So how do you teach? Why should you teach your son? You should teach your son how to mind his temper, right? It's a very important trait for a man to have, right? Considering that we know that men are generally more aggressive. Teach your boy to mind his temper. It's very important. And it's very important for you to also teach your son to show affection, to show love, to show kindness, because not only does this make him more attractive to potential mates, but it makes him more successful in long-term relationships, with friendships, with family members, if they know how to show positive emotions and if they know how to mind their negative emotions. They need to mind their jealousy. They need to mind their instinct to want to fight somebody. They don't need to feel insecure in the fact that they don't always need to get into a fight. They need to understand to read the room. It's about safety before it's about my integrity or about ego. Let us get everybody out of this situation instead of having to defend my honor by getting into a dangerous fight. So I think mothers, as women, we understand this emotional management a little bit better than men, and I think it is important for us to make them understand why is it attractive for a man to be a certain way emotionally. We know that because we're attracted to men who are emotionally intelligent. Pass these traits on so that your son can be also emotionally attractive to other women. Encourage emotional intelligence in your sons, and it's very important, like I said, to encourage these emotions. I guess it's going to be repetitive, but encourage it in a sense that start now, right? Start now. It doesn't have to wait until they're old or whatever. Encourage them. Hey, baby, how do you feel about this? Are you happy? What did your friend do today? Encourage them to compliment friends, to show support and excitement and say, wow, my friend, I'm so proud of you. I'm happy that you got through 1, 2, and 3. Hey, friend, listen, if you're feeling sad, you can talk to me. I'm here for you, right? Like, encourage these things. And that is so productive, because when they are encouraged to be there for their friends, the friends know that, oh, okay, my friend is here for me, I can also be there for him. They're essentially teaching each other how to be better friends and how to be better emotional communicators to one another. So I think it's very important to encourage boys to do this. Model emotional intelligence for your sons. This one is very specifically important to me. For as much as we say, and I did say this just now, that women are better at navigating emotional situations, I think with the same token, we tend to be very, very negligent with how we manage our emotions and how we express our emotions sometimes with our kids. When our kids make us angry, or if we are angry at the dad, how we lash out at the son. Now, you need to model emotional intellect if you are going to be the one that is going to teach emotional intellect. If you cannot manage and mind your temper, what good are you to this boy? You need to really be aware of the impact that your emotional behavior has a huge influence on how your son is going to perceive women in the future, how he's going to handle women in emotional situations in the future. If you know how to manage your emotions wisely, calmly, communicate your emotions. I'm very quick to tell my son, like, boy, listen, I'm tired. I would like for you to please give me a break, because my son talks a lot and he could talk forever, all day, all night. He will just talk. As soon as he sees me in the morning, he starts talking all the way up until I sleep. But when I'm not in the mood, it's fair for me to say, boy, I'm exhausted. I am not in the mood. Please just give me a break. Communicate what exactly you are feeling in that moment, because they will know how to handle that from that moment on, because you're very clear and direct in your request. Don't let your child now also have to guess what you might be feeling. They don't have the emotional intelligence for that. They don't have those capacities as yet. We are still nurturing this. So if we don't know how to communicate our emotions, we will not be able to mold them into emotionally intellectual, I'm using such big words, like into emotionally capable young men. All right. Challenges that we may face as mothers when trying to teach emotional intelligence to their sons. I think the biggest one is that we might forget to take control of our own emotions, and that we might express them in a way that is contradictory to what we are trying to teach our sons. So we might be a little bit moody. I personally have started to keep track of my cycle, of my menstrual cycle, just to know, like, in, oh, if I'm feeling a certain way, where am I in my cycle? I'm like, oh, okay, I'm a few days from PMSing. My husband knows already, and he slowly tried to, like, in, yo, boy, don't do that. Your mom is, she's a bit in a bad mood, and I do that deliberately so that I'm not a nuisance to them, because we are always up and down with our emotions. And I think it's very important, or our hormones or whatever. And I think it's very important for us to keep track of that, so that we know where we are, and also to understand whether our feelings right then and there are being dictated by our hormones, or whether or not they're being sincere. And how we are going to express that is very important. Give me a second. Milo wants to come in. Hey, boy. So that's a huge challenge that we might face. We might drop the ball on managing our own personal emotional capacities or whatever, and this might reflect very, very badly on what we're trying to teach our sons. Navigate social pressures that discourage vulnerability and emotional expression in boys. I personally am huge in trying to allow my son to really express whatever he might be feeling, even if those feelings are negative towards me. If my son is upset at me, if he feels that I overreacted, I do try my best to say, look, it's okay for you to say whether or not you're upset with me, and we'll work through it. Let's talk through it, right? So that I can explain to you why I reacted in this way, and you can also tell me how my reaction has affected you. He's not always forthcoming. He's not always open. I don't know if it is the right approach, but it is something that I try to do. I do give him an opportunity. No, I don't want to say give him an opportunity to, because when I say give him an opportunity, it seems like a once off and you do it now or it's done. No, I do give him the space and let him know that it's okay for him to express himself. And I've noticed that what he does is he might not tell me in the moment, but like months later, like literally 6-8 months, he'll be like, mommy, that time when you did 1, 2, and 3, I felt so angry at you. I felt this way and I felt that way, and we talk about it. So it's not always in that moment, or ever, it's actually never happened that in that moment he has expressed whatever feelings. Thirsty. We always he takes time. He takes like months and months and months before he can open himself up and say that, no, you made me feel a certain way that time. And it's okay. It's okay. So I let him know that it's okay to express his feelings, and I don't mind, right? And it's important for him to have the ability to express his feelings, and that it doesn't matter what feelings they might be. I do, however, have a flaw. There's one thing that I do tell him, but this is more even for me, right? Which is, if somebody is picking on you and pushing your buttons and making you angry, and they're trying to get you to break, keep your cool. Don't ever cry in front of these people. Don't give those people the power over you, because that's what people want to do. I feel like people who always push your limits, that's what they want. They want you to break down and cry so that they can use that and weaponize that against you. So anytime my son says like, yo, this person did this and this and this and that, and I say like, how did you react? Like, no, I just walked away, but it made me feel ways, and I'm like, look, you will not cry in front of those people. Don't ever give those people the satisfaction of your tears. You come home, you cry here at home, we'll deal with it here at home. But you're not going to do it in front of the people who are going to use that moment to weaponize, right? You got to stand strong. So that is one thing that I am very, very always consistent with. And that is also for myself. If I'm in a situation and somebody's trying to push my buttons, I refrain, I retract, because in the past I would express myself and people weaponize that. Till today, I'm known as the sensitive person and so forth, because they pushed me to that point and now I am the sissy. So I've learned to not give people power over my emotions. That is mine to keep and mine to take. So I try to transmit that. And I think I'll learn to be a little bit more clear with him in what exactly I mean by that, right? But generally, I tell him, I don't care how hurtful it is in that moment. You will not give these people the benefit of your tears. And I would also have said that to my daughter. Granted, I'm not just saying it just because he's a boy. My daughter would also get the same message if I had a daughter, which I don't. Next point after vulnerability is expressing masculinity as an individual. Now, this one is rough because I'm not a man. So I don't know how to, okay? But let's go through these points together. So encourage sons to explore interests and passions without the fear of judgment and societal expectations. Let me read this again. Encourage sons to explore interests and passions without fear of judgment, okay, and societal expectations. So I guess this is in relation to how to express masculinity. So I would say then, if your son likes dancing, you let them try dancing. If they like maybe an activity that's deemed to be feminine, you let them explore them and you make them excel in that. Because also, that's also the other thing. One thing that I've learned is people will never be satisfied. People are only satisfied when they are judging you. So there's no verdict, there's no sentencing. They just want to judge you for the rest of your life. So you might as well do what you love. And that is what I say to my boy, like, do what you enjoy. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you just do it. It doesn't help to say, I want to do it. It doesn't matter. People will judge and they'll never, ever, ever be satisfied with whatever it is that you're doing. So if they're going to do it, they might as well keep doing it. So you might as well do what you love and enjoy. This fear of what society expects of you is irrelevant because it will not pay your bills. It will not make you happy. It has zero impact on your ultimate well-being. Help sons develop a positive self-image and self-confidence that is not solely based on traditional masculinity. Yeah, because you need to love yourself before anything else is piled onto that. Before you're feminine, before you're masculine, before whatever, you need to love the individual. So your son needs to have a very positive sense of self. And it's very important for us to help harvest that without attributing, oh, that's a real man. No, you just, good job, baby. Good job. What you did there, my boy, is just the best. You are the best at what you do, right? I don't attribute any masculine ideologies or anything into what my son does. Like, if he does good, he did good because of his efforts, because of who he is. Nothing to do with the masculinity. So I think this is also very important, because now if you do, oh, this is what a man's supposed to do, then he'll start to question, like, okay, am I doing the right thing as a man? Is this a girl thing? Because people keep saying that this is a girl thing, but I'm so good at this. No, he just needs to understand himself, his own potential and his own confidence, and harvest that and enjoy and bask in that, right? So that he can be the best human being that he can be. Masculinity, I guess, is irrelevant, right? It's subjective. It depends on the individual. It depends on the circumstances of that person. So it really doesn't matter whether or not yeah, like masculinity or these traditional ideas of masculinity really should not have an effect on who your son is as a person. You as a mother should recognize who your son is as an individual and remind him of that. Remind him if he's a kind person. Remind him that if he's smart, remind him that when he's respectful, remind him of that. When he does the slightest good, remind him of that. And when he does bad, remind him of that and say, yo, this ain't right. But it does not define who you are, because you are kind, you are thoughtful, you are wonderful, you are funny, you are intelligent. So you are better than this bad behavior. You don't attribute anything else other than their utmost best to themselves. That's it. Okay? Help sons understand and navigate societal pressures around masculinity. I think this is important in a context of, like, especially with education, in the context of like anthropology. Why I say that is, make them know where humanity comes from, why it was necessary to be a certain type of man in a certain period of time, and why today you don't need to be the caveman. We're not living in the Stone Age. You don't need to act like the war veteran. We are not in a war space. So make them understand historical reasons behind why men were the way they were in their specific time frames. And there's no reason for us to so much crave the past in that sense, because it's irrelevant to who we are today. It doesn't fit the mold. Today, women are capable of going to work as well as men are capable of staying home and being stay-at-home dads. Why do we have to enforce old school ideologies that don't apply to today's situation? If society and the direction of where we are changes in a way that forces us to take these roles again, we will. That's what humanity does. We adapt to what is happening in a specific time frame. Help them navigate these societal pressures and understand that, you know what, you don't need to carry on any of this pressure because this does not apply to you. It does not apply to your current reality. You just need to live the world that you are in right now. Don't think about what used to be. What is it right now? What do we need men to do right now? And that's what we need to focus on, what we need from men right now. Not what men used to provide, not what women used to provide. What do men give us right now? What do we need from men today? Or what do we need to do for men today? That's what we need to focus on. And now we're going to touch on consent and respect. We need to find ways to effectively initiate conversations about consent. I actually had a conversation with my son when he was actually super young. He was 5. It was a very innocent incident, but that's where it all starts, in my thought, where one of our neighbors at our old place who lived above us, her and my son were very good friends, and he was a very affectionate young boy when he was like 5, 6. He was extremely affectionate. He loved to hug, snuggle. So he wanted to hug her. He wanted to hug his friend, and she did not want a hug, you know. And I saw this, and I called him and I said, "Listen, boy, don't force yourself onto somebody else's space. I know that you're trying to show her affection and that you love her and that she's your friend and that you want to give her a hug, but she does not want a hug. So you don't force yourself onto someone." Because of the ages that we're dealing with, obviously the language has to be different and palatable for them, but also because we're dealing with like super young kids, some people would be like, "No, don't be like that, give him a hug, you're being mean." But to me, that was a very, very, very good opportunity to teach him consent. It doesn't matter whether she's being mean or not. The mere fact is that she does not want to be touched. You do not impose yourself onto somebody else's space. So that was a good opportunity for me to have my first conversation about consent with my son. And obviously, because we speak so much, we've had multiple conversations about why this is not even okay. And the way that I also manage him, right? I knock when I go into his room. I don't just go into a space when he's naked. If you know, I respect his boundaries as well, and I tell him, you respect my boundaries as well. You don't just walk into my bedroom just because I'm your mom. You knock, you know, I might be naked and so forth. So I've established these boundaries and these points of consent with my son, right? Yes, we don't need to say, oh, can I give you a hug? We hug each other and so forth. But he knows that if somebody else doesn't want to be hugged, he does not get to do that. So I think the earlier you can have this consent conversation with your son, the better. And try to not make it preachy. Really deal with the situation at hand. But also, if you don't have a specific situation to deal with, the way you handle him is also a very good starting point as to how you're going to establish consent and boundaries and respectful behaviors between a boy and a girl, or even just in general, people in general. Okay, model healthy and respectful relationships for your sons. And if for your sons to emulate. Yeah, so again, it's the same thing, right? So that thing that I was saying of the way that I handle him has a lot to do with how I approach the idea of consent. So how I conduct myself, how I treat people, how he sees me behaving with people's boundaries is also a good way for him to learn how to, that I am not just speaking, I also practice what I preach. Help sons understand the importance of boundaries and communication. This one is a very difficult one, especially for kids, because the consequences of boundaries and consent for children is different to adults. And you don't want to scare your boy into jail time and all these things. But it is very important to at least establish that, look, you cannot be in the same room with a girl with closed doors naked. You can't do that. But then it's so gruesome, it's so like an aggressive to say that, unless you have a specific incident to deal with. But I can't just go to my son and say, look, you can never be in a room with a girl naked, and he's never been in a room with a girl naked. Then you'll be like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, I don't understand. Now you're opening a whole other can of worms. So to understand, to help them understand the importance of boundaries and communication, I think it just goes back again to modeling these scenarios, like, and to live a life and to show them how you lead a life of boundaries and consent and communication. And you learn to communicate. Hey, can I come in? Oh, listen, I need 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Can you do this? Are you comfortable doing 1, 2, and 3? I think it shouldn't just be a one-way street. It literally needs to be a two-way street, because if you show him that you respect his boundaries, he will learn how to respect other people's boundaries. It's not just an expectation that the boy needs to respect the girl's boundaries. The girl also needs to learn to respect the boy's boundaries. The girl in this case is me as his mother, so I need to respect my son's boundaries and allow him to have his space when he needs to, so that he understands the importance of respecting other people's boundaries, because he knows what it's like to have his boundaries respected, and he knows what that feels like. So I think that is one of the best ways that I can think of to just encourage the understanding of and the importance of boundaries and communications. Okay, now we're going to move on to battling overprotectiveness. Strike a balance between being overprotective and letting your sons explore the world and taking risks. I actually want to add to this, aside from them exploring the world and taking risks, I think it's very important to balance being overprotective and evading responsibility. This is something that I found myself doing, where I feel so protective over him that sometimes I don't like it when people call him out, right? But even if he didn't do something that he was supposed to do, I find myself wanting to protect him. And that is something I wonder if it's very female, like a lot of mothers do, right? Like, we want to protect our sons from like in bad, so even if they need to face the consequences and to take up the responsibility for their actions, we are very quick to try and protect them. So we really need to be very careful with that, because we need to learn to strike that balance between being protective. I mean, I'm not going to let him play on the roof, right, and jump and take those kinds of risks, right? But it's okay for him to go camping, for example. But also at the same time, if he goes camping and he misbehaves there, he needs to face the punishment and he needs to face the consequences. If he broke the rule of the camping people, he needs to face the consequences and he needs to take up responsibility for his actions. So I want to add here responsibility. So allow them to explore the world and take risks, but also face responsibility to their actions. So we can't always be protective over our boys, okay? We need to teach our boys how to protect themselves while also encouraging them to be independent and self-reliant. This one is a very tricky one because I've always discouraged my boy to the whole tit for tat, and I've always discouraged him from fighting back. If somebody hits him, I've always discouraged him from hitting the person. I say report to authority. If you're at school and somebody's mean to you and they hit you, don't fight. Don't start a fight, because when you both fight, nobody wins that situation. But if somebody punches you, you have the scar, that person gets the criminal charge. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you are in harm's way, right? So I don't know how to navigate this one. I don't have an answer to teaching my son how to protect himself. I think it's okay for him to protect himself verbally. I think it's okay for him to just turn away from a situation. He doesn't need to be in a fight. And if he finds himself in a situation he can get out of it, he needs to get out of it. So this one I really battle with because I don't know how to teach my son to protect himself. But I know how to teach him to be very self-dependent and resilient, because I have made it a point, mainly because of my visual impairment, that he's an independent person. There's a lot of things that I'm not able to do for him. So he needs to learn how to do a lot of things very early on. I taught him to cook very early on. I told him how to do his chores very early on, how to make up his own bed and so forth, because I feel like if anything happens to me, he will know how to take care of himself. As well as the fact that when I lost my eyesight and I had to now not live with my family and had to live with other people, I didn't know how to do a lot of these things. I had to be taught by other people how to do certain things. So I made it a point that my son knows how to do certain things, a lot of things, and that he is self-dependent and self-sufficient, so that he doesn't have to rely on other people in order for him to survive. So in terms of independence and resilience or self-reliance, got that down. I am grateful that I have not had a broken leg or broken anything so far, but I think it's fair for boys to just go out and boys be boys, let them develop a healthy sense of risk taking, because then if they're overprotected, they don't know what direction to take in the future. They won't understand what is healthy risk taking and what is actual danger. So it's very fair to let boys just go out there and do their thing. Balance protection and preparation for the real world. So that has more to do with what I was saying on the top there with responsibility. I think it's okay to be protective, but they also need to be prepared for the real world, because if you go out there, what is it? He wants attention. So if you go out there and you don't, and your son just doesn't know how to take responsibility for his actions, it's gonna be a problem. So it's fair to be protective. Yes, don't go do 1, 2, 3, but also don't be evasive to responsibility. You need to be prepared for the consequences of your action, because the real world does not hide from anybody. The real world is out there, and if you are not ready for the real world, ooh girl. Next, this is going to be very difficult because Milo is going to be in my way. Dog. Okay. I'm podcasting with a dog. Dude, come down. Okay. So, this is not working out, boy. It's not working out. I tried. It's not working out. I thought he could be my co-host. He's not sitting still. He just wants too much attention. Empower sons to become confident and resilient individuals. Yeah, they need to be very comfortable and happy within themselves, and they need to be comfortable and confident with whatever it is that they identify with. Okay, they need to be comfortable with their identity, and it's our job as mothers, right, to empower them and to encourage them to be resilient and to be proud of who they are and their identity. So next we are going to talk about male role models, because yes, we are mothers, we are raising our boys, but we cannot do this alone. So it's very important for us to have positive role models, whether it's our sons' fathers, whether it's another male figure in our boys' lives. I think we know what's positive and what is harmful, and it's very important for us to allow these men to step in and to be in our sons' lives, because you know what, I feel like a lot of these things are so uniquely male that I cannot relate to. And I'm very grateful that I have my husband, my son's father in his life to help me navigate a lot of these situations. Have fathers and male role models help you navigate the challenges of raising sons in today's world. And especially, like I said, with the whole Andrew Tate situation, it's very, very difficult to kind of like put aside your biases and let this situation play out, or find the right wording for not wording per se, but like just find the right guidance, or even know how to properly guide your son. And I feel like men understand the male experience better than women do, and who best to help boys navigate the current climate than another male figure. Involve fathers and male role models in conversations about masculinity and consent. Yep. Because their perspective is different. Everything about this is going to have a different perspective from the male side to the female side. I'm thinking, what is it like to receive consent versus giving consent? We're not always used to giving consent. We don't even know what that is like. How do we even navigate that? And I feel like these conversations about consent definitely do need a male figure around in order for you to know how to properly guide your son in terms of how to teach them consent and how they can be very tolerable men. Work with fathers and male role models to create a healthy and positive environment for their sons. I personally like to, whenever my son has a weird question or whatever, which is almost always, I actually answer those questions, try to, for the most part, to answer them in front of his dad, so that it's not a thing of like, this is just for your mom, you just ask your mom this. I try to really make it a point that these conversations are both, you can have these conversations with both mom and dad. So I really do try to also involve my husband in these spaces to have these conversations. And I find that sometimes men tend to be a little bit awkward about like conversations, let's say about sex or anything weird like that. They don't want to be a part of it, but I'm a little bit forceful in making sure that he is in the space whenever we talk about these things. And then it's also important for men to teach boys about emotional intellect and vulnerability, while also promoting strength and resilience. And again, this is very, very, very good, I think, perspective for male figures to teach our sons, because again, we only have the perspective of female. We only have the female experience in this regard. And I feel like if we really put an effort to try and find, I know a lot of women don't have their sons' fathers with, right? But I mean, I'm sure there is a male figure in your life that you respect, that you can ask to be a part of your son's life in a way that helps them, and also helps you to do the best job you can possible to raise your boy. It's not an easy journey. It's a very challenging one. It's a very scary one. And what I know is that, I mean, so far it's been a joy, but it's starting to change. He's 12 now. He's stepping into his teen era, and I'm scared that there are things that I might miss. And because I'm not so aware and so thoughtful many times about the fact that he is a boy and I'm a woman, there are things that I really need to keep in mind, and that I do have to navigate differently with my son, that I'm not fully equipped for. So I just thought, you know what, let's just share a little bit of these ideas and see, maybe this can help us have some form of guidance on how to move forward with regards to raising our boys. And that actually does bring us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much for your support. Subscribe to the show on Instagram, growedup podcast, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on YouTube we are growedup podcast. And I love you. And remember that we are all going through something. Please express kindness to one another. We don't need another person to be a mini. Okay, so love one another. be kind, and I'll see you next week. Yeah, Milo's busy being Milo. Love you guys. Bye.